How did people go from infertility to fertility, or for men, ED to no ED? The answer to many common health problems is in your food. The science is in. A vegan diet can restore your health. Dr. Neal Barnard, author of Your Body in Balance, has the answers next on the PETA Podcast. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this behind-the-scenes look at PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. Here we talk to the key players at PETA and the movement and ask them about how animal rights change their lives and how they stay motivated to make the world a better place for the animals. On today's episode, Dr. Neal Barnard not only plays guitar on this intro music, he's a world-renowned doctor who has helped bridge the gap between nutrition and medicine. He talks of cases like the experienced health professional who thought she was infertile.
But eventually she thought, all right, let me try this low-fat vegan diet for me and see what it'll do. And within about 6 weeks' time, she was ovulating again and she got pregnant. And she has a beautiful baby, and she sent me pictures, and she and her husband and her little baby are just a picture of health. People don't know about this because until fairly recently, the science wasn't done. And I'm going to take a little bit of blame on my own profession, the medical profession, right, which is a little bit too quick with the prescription pad and a little bit too slow with guiding people on what they can eat.
In his new book, Dr. Barnard talks about hormones and how they're thrown out of balance. Hormonal haywire, he calls it, but how through diet, your body can be in balance again and can address issues from fertility, erectile dysfunction, even some cancers and mental health issues. Depression, anxiety, maybe diet can help. Here's Dr. Neal Barnard on his new book, Your Body in Balance, on the PETA Podcast. I mean, it has been a while since I've seen you. I think the last time...
Yeah, it sure has.
The last time I saw you, Neal, I was trying to put on a bow tie on you in a bathroom of a hotel.
That is right. Oh, yes, you sure were. You were so patient and helpful.
Well, I was...
yes, wasn't that funny?
I was trying my damnedest to get it on, and we were in a kind of compromising position in the men's bathroom. Yeah. And at some point,
that was funny.
Yeah, and I just failed, and at some point, you just had to go out onto the stage or wherever you had to be at that time. But
yes, that was hysterical. Oh wow.
Yeah,
that's right.
So, but anyway, since then you've gone on to write so many books, at least. Well, 14, right? And this is the 15th? And this is an important book. And I just want to start off saying that, it seems like it should be common sense, that food occurs in nature and, food should be considered therapeutic since nature is where people, the big pharmaceutical companies get the sources for the drugs. And so essentially the pharmaceutical companies are the middleman. It makes sense to just cut out the middleman. I mean, we can't just gnaw on bark and get aspirin maybe, but the pharmaceutical companies make it easy. But if we cut out the middleman and just go directly to the food and see food as therapeutic, wouldn't that just solve all our problems, Neal?
That's one way of thinking about it. I have to say, there is a role for medication. There's a role for standard therapies and so forth, but often they let us down and they have side effects. And what we have managed to discover is that foods can actually affect body chemistry in ways that are much more profound than we had thought. So the whole reason that I wrote Your Body in Balance was to give people a roadmap for using foods in an intelligent way and hopefully tackle their problems.
When you say, well, food can be therapeutic or food can help get your body in balance, a lot of people will still think, oh, that's the stuff of quackery, right? Because food is food and drugs are drugs and never the twain shall meet. I mean, there is still that attitude that you're fighting, right?
Well, I think people are right to be skeptical because there are all kinds of fad diets out there. So that's why when we do our work, we have to do research studies to prove what works and establish what doesn't. And let me give you an example. I was sitting at my desk, the phone rang, and it was a young woman who had terrible, just off-the-scale menstrual cramps. Now, a lot of women have cramps, and they thought, well, this is just part of being a woman. For maybe 1 in 10, they are off-the-scale bad, like cannot get out of bed type bad. Mm-hmm. And that's what she had. And so I thought, well, I could give her some painkillers for a couple of days, and did. But I thought, what's causing this, and how do we prevent it from happening again next month? And I remembered that foods will affect estrogens, the female sex hormones. And there are a whole bunch of different estrogens. And every month, the amount of estrogens goes up and it goes down according to a woman's monthly cycle. And researchers have been looking at how foods will affect estrogens because of breast cancer. If you could choose foods to reduce the amount of estrogens in a woman's blood a little bit, that could reduce her likelihood of developing breast cancer, or if she had breast cancer already, that could reduce the likelihood of the cancer progressing. It could save her life. So to make it short and sweet, the more that the diet is plant-based, the more the estrogens get back into balance. So I suggested to this young woman with menstrual pain, let me give you a couple of days of painkillers. But for the next month, would you want to try a diet that's two things? No animal products. And also, I want to keep oils really low. It's a very low-fat diet. And 4 weeks later, she called me back and said, I've been doing your diet. And it's amazing. My period just sneaked up on me with zero pain. She found that it was a cure, and she felt great for months, unless she would slip on the diet, and then the pain would come back. But that's just one case. So I connected with the Georgetown University Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and we did a study with a larger group of women, and we established how to do it and how to make it work. And we published our findings in a journal called Obstetrics and Gynecology. We've now done that many times with many different kinds of conditions, but it starts off with an individual observation, or maybe observations in small numbers of people, but then you put it to a rigorous test.
Now, a lot of people would say, okay, you start off with individuals, but they'll be so skeptical to say, not me, it won't happen. It won't work with me necessarily. You can't say it works all the time. How valid is the study to say that, hey, in the majority of cases, it could work?
Luckily, that's something that we actually can test. And the beauty of this is that all the side effects of going to a healthy plant-based vegan diet, all the side effects are ones you want. So there's no danger to trying it. And let me give you an example of how the effects can be a bit surprising. I mentioned this young woman whose pain went away, and then we did a larger study where we found that it works with lots of people. In the course of that study, we asked all of the women participants to all the participants were women, of course. We asked them all to avoid taking any hormone medications because that would confound the study. And so what that meant is if the women were sexually active, they had to use some kind of contraception other than birth control pills because those are hormones. So one of the women in the study said, don't worry about me. I don't use the pill. I don't use anything. Because she and her husband had given up trying to have a baby a long time before. She wasn't ovulating. Mm-hmm. She was basically infertile. So she was using no contraception at all. The second month that she was on the low-fat, healthy, plant-based diet, she came into our research center and she said, I've got bad news and I've got good news. I said, what is it? She said, I've got to leave your study because I am pregnant. She had thought she was infertile. She wasn't infertile. It was her hormone. Well, her infertility was caused by her hormones being out of balance. And once she changed her diet, she got back into balance. And I saw her several years later she had 3 children at that point. And we have now seen that hormones are like switches or dials that control all the functions of your body. And if they're all turned in the wrong direction, your body won't work right. But if you find a way to get it right in the sweet spot, menstrual cramps, infertility, endometriosis, some women have PCOS or hot flashes, or for men, erectile dysfunction, prostate cancer, unwanted weight gain, mood problems. All of these things are hormone issues. And so I thought it's not enough for us to do research studies and put them in journals. People have to know about it. So I'm happy to say that I've written this new book called Your Body in Balance. the new science of food, hormones, and health. And my hope is that people will do one of two things, that they'll pick it up and see themselves and so that they can feel better. Or if they have a family member who's been suffering from a low energy because they're low thyroid or they're having side effects of medications, maybe they could lead them to a new kind of wisdom about how to choose foods in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And to make it fun, all the recipes are vegan. They're all plant-based, healthy. And they were done by Lindsay Nixon, who a lot of people know. She's the happy herbivore. And she is a genius at making great recipes, and to have her create them and fill your body in balance with recipes. And my job is to write the science and make it easy. It's a cool thing. Okay,
so now, Neal Barnard, really vegan in disguise. Because, there's this backlash, right, against veganism. They had vegan food at the Golden Globes, and there's so much backlash about, it's disgusting. They're making us be vegan. You're really just trying to make us go vegan, right?
Well, let me respond to what you're saying. You're right that sometimes there can be some backlash, and some people may wonder if I really am a doctor. But to answer that question, the answer is I really am a doctor. I went to the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences. And after I finished medical school, I did my residency at George Washington University as well. And then now I'm a fellow of the American College of Cardiology. I'm on the faculty of the same medical school that I attended. I'm a lifetime member of the American Medical Association, and I'm now on the board of directors of the Medical Society of the District of Columbia. So this is the real deal. What really matters is the research that we do. And here at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, we do research studies to test what works. And then when we find it out, it has to be evaluated in the process that's known as peer review, where, for example, when we did our diabetes research, the National Institutes of Health invited us to request a grant. We did that. And that whole process goes through intensive peer review. And then if they decide that your research is worthwhile, they write you a nice, generous check, which is exactly what happened. Your tax dollars at work. And we found that a healthy, low-fat, plant-based diet, you have to do it the right way and plan it appropriately, but it's not hard to do. It's the most powerful approach for reversing or improving diabetes. And then the findings go through more peer review before they're published. And in our case, the American Diabetes Association published the findings of that study. And so I think, Emil, what you're saying is right, that people are concerned. They don't want to be told things that aren't true by people who may not be qualified. So when our doctors speak out and when we talk about the findings of research, we have to adhere to the highest possible standards. I'm hoping that people don't get too mired in the science of it. I want them to try it. They need to enjoy a healthy breakfast, a healthy lunch, a healthy dinner, and see how their body feels, because it doesn't matter scientifically how good and how accurate it is. What really matters is, do you like the lasagna that you're making from my book, and do you feel better, and are you losing weight, and is your energy back, and is your pain gone? Because if we haven't accomplished that, we haven't accomplished anything. So the message of your body in balance is it's your body in balance.
Yeah,
eat the healthy foods and see how you do.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter if the truth is there in the science. It doesn't matter. What matters is if it works on the people reading the book, because people are used to being gaslit and they're a little skeptical maybe. And I'm just saying that I know that going plant-based or going to a vegan diet works, and so that's what. When I read the recipes and I read your book, I get turned on. We're really talking about a motivational, psychological issue to try to get people to move toward the truth, because some people will stay behind. And you see, from the studies or the evidence of how many people have diabetes type 2 and how many people die of cardiovascular disease. The truth is out there. What's going to motivate them to go to the paths that will make them healthy?
Oh, what a great question. I have to say that the truth is out there, but sometimes it's a little harder to find. When the work that we did, for example, despite the fact that our diabetes research was funded by the National Institutes of Health of the U.S. government, and published by the American Diabetes Association and presented at their conference. And despite the fact that, as you know, I had a PBS show devoted, my first of 4 PBS series was on diabetes.
Right.
And it aired 6,000 or 7,000 times in communities all over the place. There's still people who have not heard this. And I'll give you an example. A man named Vance came into our center. He didn't realize what a diet could do. But he had type 2 diabetes, and his family, all the way up and down his family tree, they had diabetes. And he said, "I know what this means. It means my eyesight could be affected. You know, people with diabetes end up losing a leg. The complications can be horrible." But the research study said, we're going to test out a vegan diet, and that's what he did. He got rid of all the animal products. He kept the oils really low. And the first thing that he said, really to his surprise, was that a vegan diet was easy. And I said, "What do you mean it's easy? You know, people think, they imagine it might be hard." He said, "What do you mean? Other diabetes diets say you've got to count all your carbohydrate grams and
Right.
cut back on your calories and go to bed hungry. And you don't make me do any of that. You just say you're making chili. It's not meat chili, it's bean chili. Or you make spaghetti. Instead of meat sauce, put on the tomato sauce and the wild mushrooms and the artichokes. And, you know, I mean, he said this is not a hard thing. But what then happened to him is he noticed that he had gained a lot of weight over time. He was finally on the vegan diet starting to lose that weight, bit by bit by bit. And after a year, he'd lost 60 pounds. And his blood sugar came into the absolutely normal range. His private doctor said, "I've got to stop your medication." And he did. And after a year, when we did his blood testing on no medication, his blood sugar control was in the normal range that it would be when you're a 14-year-old kid. And I want to tell you something, Emil. When I was in medical school, I was taught that diabetes is not a reversible condition.
Right.
Once you had it forever. And here was a man in front of me in our research study who had all he had done was change his diet. His doctor could stop his medication, and he, for all intents and purposes, did not have type 2 diabetes anymore. Now, at that time, it was shocking and controversial. Nowadays, we have seen this so often that people have become quite comfortable with saying that diabetes is, in fact, a two-way street. You can get rid of it. But what you said is the most important thing, is that people have to know that. And if they do not know that a diet change can be remarkably easy, that the benefits are profound. Can I give you just one more example really quickly? And forgive me for talking so much.
No, go ahead.
But there's a woman named Allison. And by the way, these are real people. These are their names that I'm telling you. They've given me permission to share their experience. But Allison her story is in Your Body in Balance. Allison was she is a registered dietitian in Wisconsin. And Allison treats cancer patients. They will come to her, and she will help them to select healthy foods, in addition to whatever treatments their doctors may prescribe. And she's very good at it. But Allison had a problem too, and her problem was PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. And what that means is that you have your hormones are out of balance. A woman's body is making female hormones as it should, but it's also making just a touch too much male hormone, and that leads to skin changes, ovulatory changes, infertility, and she had all these problems. And she and her husband had been trying to conceive, wasn't going anywhere. The doctor said, "We know what it is. You've got polycystic ovary disease, da-da-da-da-da." This is not an uneducated person. This is a person who knows about science, knows about health, and she knows about food. Mm-hmm. But eventually she thought, all right, let me try this low-fat vegan diet for me and see what it'll do. And within about 6 weeks' time, she was ovulating again, and she got pregnant. Mm-hmm. And she has a beautiful baby. And she sent me pictures, and she and her husband and her little baby are just a picture of health. But people don't know about this because until fairly recently, the science wasn't done. And unfortunately, I'm going to take a little bit of blame on my own profession, the medical profession, right, which is a little bit too quick with the prescription pad and a little bit too slow with guiding people on what they can eat.
Right. Well, I was going to say that, Neal. I mean, here you're talking about this one woman who is, in the field. there are other doctors who have seen the light. They've gone through diet changes and they say, oh, this must be right. But why don't all the doctors know this? And why don't all the doctors say this to their patients? Why aren't they all just in unison saying low-fat, vegan diet, plant-based diet, that's the way to health?
Well, when I started medical school here in Washington, I moved to Washington, D.C. from where I grew up and started medical school, and we learned all about how medications work and the physiology of the body, but nutrition was really an ignored topic. It was viewed as not being very important, and during residency, it wasn't discussed much either. And to this day, here in Washington, D.C., where I'm a licensed physician, I can get my license, and I do get my license renewed every 2 years. There is zero requirement that you know anything about nutrition. It's not a requirement at all. And we are trying to change that, but that's unfortunately the way it is. Now, that's the bad news, but there's some very, very good news here that I think is important. And that is there are more and more doctors who are tired of being a pill factory. And they want patients to get well, and they want it to be a partnership where you're guiding the patient in a good way. And they are embracing the power of nutrition dramatically. And every summer here in Washington, D.C., we have the International Conference on Nutrition in Medicine. And by the way, if any doctor or dietitian or nurse is listening to this podcast and you would like to have your life changed, come join us at the International Conference on Nutrition in Medicine. In 2020, it's going to be August 6th through 8th. We get together for 3 days. It's 20 hours of continuing medical education, all about nutrition, and it is so exciting. And when you look out at the room of 1,000 or 1,200 doctors all embracing the power of nutrition, you realize things are changing. The neglect of this, that is starting to end, and it's really a new day, which is good.
Yeah, what I notice is I do see more doctors out there, and yet is it moving the medical community a lot or just a little? Where is it going? I mean, are people seeing the light?
Yeah, I think it's moving a lot. And part of it is because there are some conditions where we really didn't have a particularly good alternative. I'll give you another one. How many people do you know who might have mood issues where they lapse into depression from time to time, or they have anxiety from time to time? And what do? They go to the doctor, and the doctor says, let me give you an antidepressant. The patient says, I don't think I want that. Let me wait. A couple months later, the patient says, all right, I'm not getting anywhere. Let me try it. And what you discover is about a third of those patients do get better. Another third don't. And there's the final third would have gotten better anyway, whether they took the medication or not. There are side effects of the medications, weight gain, sexual side effects, other things too. Now, to be clear, there is a role for medication in depression, and depression can be really dangerous. Suicide is a real issue. So we don't fool around with this. However, what has happened, there has been a change even there, and let me describe this. A number of years ago, we did a research study with the car insurance company Geico. And the only reason we did it was because their headquarters is about 4 blocks from the Physicians Committee's headquarters.
Right.
So we started working with them. And the study was very successful. Implementing a vegan diet at Geico headquarters helped people to lose weight, and their diabetes got better. But then we discovered something else. I think it was in the second Geico study that we did in 10 different cities across the United States. We had hundreds of people participating. Not only did they lose weight and their diabetes improved, but we started to notice that on standardized tests, mood indicators were all improving. Depression was abating, anxiety was going away, and then we looked at how many sick days do people have, and that was diminishing too. Job absenteeism was going away. And so other researchers started looking into this, and they found that a healthy plant-based diet isn't just physically effective for physical conditions, but also for mood issues. Depression starts to get better. Now, there's all different ways of doing it. You can do it in a kind of junk food way, but if you do it with a healthy diet with vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans, take your vitamin B12, and lace up your sneakers, add exercise to it, that combination in some studies has been as powerful as medication. Now, different parts of it have been tested in different ways. The exercise component has been tested. The diet component has been tested. And I frankly think we need more research. But what the study I would like to do is to really put this to a rigorous study in a comparison against medication and see how we do.
So you're saying that because it's not specific foods, it's just going away from meat, going to a plant-based diet, any fruits and vegetables, I suppose, preferably more green leafies, and maybe some legumes in there, and adding some exercise, a lot of exercise, or just a walk around the block?
Okay, those are great questions. You've asked several important things. First question is which foods. Part of it is what you're not eating. It turns out that getting away from meat is helpful with regard to the mood, according to the studies that we have. And the worst thing is when a person goes on one of these ketogenic diets where it's all meat all the time, and they're afraid of carbohydrate. Some studies have shown that has a negative effect on the mood. Then with regard to what you emphasize, there does seem to be, I mentioned fruits, vegetables, beans, and whole grains. The fruits and the vegetables in particular do seem to have, and I don't know why this is, but they do seem to have an antidepressant effect. Dairy products may have a mood-altering effect in a harmful way as well. Now, part of this may be because of the way they affect gut microbes. The gut microbiome, I'm talking about the bacteria that inhabit your large intestine. The type of bacteria that are in your large intestine change depending on what you're eating. And on a meat-based diet, the bacterial colonies tend to be unfavorable ones that can lead not only to constipation and other problems, but also to mood issues. At least that's what the evidence seems to suggest.
And all this just by going vegan, essentially. If you're cutting out dairy, that means no cheese, no milk. Do you replace it with, say, almond milk or oat milk and things like that?
Yes, you can. And I would suggest, I always suggest that people eat relatively simply. So the more we're going to healthy, unprocessed foods. So here are my rules. Let me kind of walk you through it. Mm-hmm. 4 healthy food groups. That's vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans. Now, those are my ingredients. So that can mean chili, or it can mean a bean burrito, which is the tortilla is made of grains and the beans are inside. So and then vegetables or fruits on the side. But anyway, those 4 food groups: vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans. Take vitamin B12. You don't need much. You need 2.4 micrograms a day, and it's at every drugstore and every health food store, but you do have to have it. And that combination alone will revolutionize your health. If you want to get fancy, make sure you're getting sunshine for vitamin D. If you're not getting regular sunshine, you should take a vitamin D supplement. Most doctors would say about 2,000 international units a day, something like that. And you asked about exercise? Yes. Exercise helps. And the amount of exercise, it should be, nobody knows the exact right amount, but I would argue for a half-hour brisk walk more or less every day, or if that just doesn't work in your routine, about an hour 3 times a week, something like that. But this is not weightlifting. It's more the aerobic exercise, running, dancing, tennis, jogging, or just brisk walking.
Yeah. And now also, I saw in your book, you said we don't get enough fiber, that we should actually double our fiber. And the average American gets maybe 16 grams of fiber, you said, but we should double that?
We should double it. And 2 things. One is that the U.S. government started looking at how much fiber people were eating. And just what you said is people are not eating very much fiber. But they also found that when you go from 10 grams of fiber per day to 15 to 20 to 25 to 30, if you then correlate the risk of having a depressive episode, it goes right down as fiber goes up. And this at first, this was just an observation because people didn't know anything about gut microbes. But then, of course, people realized, aha, that's it. When you're on a low-fiber diet, you have the most unhealthy gut microbes. You feel constipated, you feel rotten. Plus, they make compounds that affect the brain. When a high-fiber diet means a vegetable diet and beans and grains, and that helps your gut to be healthy, and that in turn will affect brain health.
So beat depression, eat more beans.
Exactly. And again, we want to take these conditions seriously. This doesn't mean throw away whatever medications your doctor gave you and canceling your doctor's appointment, but it does mean you're going to eat food, and foods in many cases can really solve these problems. One other twist on this. One contributor to mood issues is the thyroid gland. Your thyroid is at the base of your neck, and it's a little sort of butterfly-shaped organ that you can just barely feel. The thyroid regulates energy. And when people are low in thyroid, their mood can go down. They start to gain weight. They've got no energy. Their hair and their skin are affected as well. And for the longest time, people had no idea what this is about. They just saw these people who were sluggish and not feeling good. And you can replace the thyroid hormone. If your thyroid isn't making much of it, you can take thyroid pills. However, researchers started to discover that you can deal with this with food, and you do it in two ways. Number one, thyroid hormone is made with iodine. And so when people were not getting iodine in their diet, they would get low thyroid. And iodine is in iodized salt, but the really natural place for it is in plants from the ocean, seaweeds. And so in Japan, people eat lots of seaweed as seaweed salads, or they wrap it around their cucumber roll or whatever it might be. In Omaha or New Jersey, people may not eat much seaweed, but you put that back in your diet or else have iodized salt or somehow, then you're getting the iodine that will protect your thyroid. The second thing, though, is that some people, in fact, most people who have low thyroid, their thyroid gland is actually not functioning well because of an autoimmune reaction in the body that in some cases is triggered by foods. In Your Body in Balance, I described several cases of people, one of whom was a physician, where they got the dairy and the meat and the eggs out of their diet. The autoimmune attack on their thyroid went away, and their thyroid problems were addressed effectively. Now, we need more research on all of this, but if anybody's got thyroid issues, do not walk to a healthy plant-based diet and see how you do.
Now, we've cured thyroid problems, some depression, mood issues. We cured infertility, or let's not say cured, but we have addressed issues like that simply by going to a plant-based diet. And it's all in your book, Your Body in Balance. And one of the first phrases in that book, in the opening pages, you talk about our bodies being in a hormonal haywire. And I guess with food, we can get our bodies back in balance. Eating better food or simple, healthy food will make us healthier too. That the message?
That's exactly the message. And so in Your Body in Balance, I walk first through all the conditions related to sex hormones. So that's the start of it. So I mentioned menstrual cramps, or endometriosis, or PCOS, the polycystic ovary syndrome. But also cancer, breast cancer for women, ovarian cancer or uterine cancer as well. For men, prostate cancer, testicular cancer. These are hormone-related cancers. And then menopause. So those are all related to sex hormones. And then we're going to talk about metabolic issues. And so that's diabetes, erectile dysfunction, thyroid problems. Is your skin healthy? Is your hair healthy? And your mood. So those might relate to other hormones, not the sex hormones. And then the final part, I wanted to help people to embrace a healthy diet. And it is a plant-based diet, and we want to do it in the healthiest possible way. And then the final chapter talks about environmental contaminants. You can be on the healthiest diet that there is, but if you're getting environmental contaminants from the lining of the can that you opened that had your green beans in it, or from pesticides that come out of your faucet in your drinking water, those things can affect you too. So I wanted people to know how to avoid chemical exposures to the extent that we can. And with some very, very simple steps, all of these things can put back into better balance.
Recently, there was a romaine lettuce recall, right? And E. coli and other things that in plants that I guess is that the runoff from the meat industry or from things in the water, contaminants in the water, and how do people guard against exposure to that?
These are Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, Campylobacter. These are intestinal bacteria, and one of the nicest things about a head of lettuce is that it does not have an intestine. And so if it was ever contaminated with Salmonella, it's because of just what you said, that the farmer is using irrigation water that's downstream from where the cattle were grazing, or the feedlot or something like that. So it comes from animal agriculture in many, many cases. And I'll tell you something shocking. Women sometimes have urinary tract infections. Researchers have taken urine samples and you isolate the bacteria and you do the DNA fingerprint of those bacteria, you can identify exactly what type of bacteria they are, and not just the genus and species, but specific strains. Then researchers, medical detectives really, discovered the source of these bacteria. Where are they coming from? And you could have bowled people over when they found the result. A lot of people will go to the store. A mother will or a father will be going through the grocery line, and they pick up a chicken and a packet of chicken. They bring it home, and they open up the plastic wrap, and a little bit of juice dribbles out on the kitchen counter, and they wipe it off with a sponge. Chicken, not being fruit, don't actually have juice. The juice that came out was actually from the cooling, it's water from the cooling bath that was in the slaughterhouse that's filled with feces. And so as those bits of feces come out on the kitchen counter, they carry with them bacteria that they picked up in the slaughterhouse. It turns out that 70 or 80% of urinary tract infections in certain studies that have been done have been attributable specifically to coliform bacteria from chicken products. What I'm saying is you pick these up, you get them at the store, sooner or later they colonize your body, and not just you, but your kids, your husband, your wife, your partner, other people get colonized with these bacteria, and sooner or later one of them makes its way up the urethra, into the bladder, and causes an infection. It started, believe it or not, with chicken.
So don't eat chicken.
People are best off not eating animal products at all. But when I talk about contaminants in food, it's not only bacteria. There are also chemicals that can come in. And there was an amazing study. Researchers in Boston asked a group of volunteers to eat Progresso soup. Just open a can of Progresso vegetable soup and heat it up. And, Progresso is a fine brand and seems kind of a cut above others. However, the researchers did urine tests, and what they discovered was that there was a chemical that showed up in the volunteers' urine. It was called BPA, or bisphenol A. Where were they getting it from? Well, they continued the experiment and asked everybody to have vegetable soup, but now they were going to have one that was not made by Progresso. It was made from scratch. And they didn't have the BPA in their urine. What was it? The lining of the can was a resin that had BPA in it. And the BPA got in their bloodstreams and then went through the kidneys into their urine. Now, BPA is a hormonally active compound that's known as an endocrine disruptor. And the scientists debate how dangerous is it, but by and large, you don't want it. So now you're going to go to the health food store and say, I don't want to get that one. I want to get a BPA-free can, a can of soup that doesn't have any BPA in it. So you go down the canned soup aisle, and you see them. They're there. There are all kinds of brands that are marked BPA-free. So you bring them to the cash register, and you use your credit card and walk out the door with a sack full of soup. And as you're crumbling up the receipt, or the little credit card slip, the credit card slip is thermal paper that's coated with BPA. And it's going through your skin, getting into your bloodstream. And when you go to your ATM and you get a slip there, or a slip from your laundry, or a lottery slip, or a boarding pass, that thermal paper is BPA coated. Now, the Progresso company has started to be concerned about this. And to their credit, they are in the process of phasing out BPA, and because it's an easy thing to make a can that doesn't have any of it. But this is just one example of chemicals that you can be following a totally healthy vegan diet, and little did you know that chemicals have shown up in your life. And this is very, very, very common. Similarly, pesticides are sprayed on the golf course you walked on, or the city park. You may not know that they're there.
Yeah. So how do we protect ourselves from this in our food? Is it, for example, can we go organic? Is going organic a better way?
In your body in balance, I give people lots and lots of tips on how to do this. But one that you mentioned is go organic, and it's a darn good idea. Organic doesn't mean that there will be more vitamins or more minerals in your food. What it means is the food will be cleaner. It's not going to have the chemicals in it to the extent that non-organic will. And if a person is not yet on a vegan diet, that should really be step one, because who is really exposed to pesticides more than anybody else? Chickens, cows, pigs, and fish. Fish live in what has become the human sewer, and the little fish is consuming the chemicals on the ocean floor and is now eaten by the bigger fish, and the food just goes right up in the food chain. And if you decide to be at the top of the food chain by eating animal products, you're going to be accumulating these chemicals. Researchers years ago started testing how much chemicals there are in people's bodies. And you know how you test it? When women are lactating, because they're breastfeeding, you just take a milk sample, you send it to a laboratory. And what you discover is that women who have been vegan for a while have dramatically lower levels of chemical contaminants in their blood. And it's obvious why, because they're not exposed to any of the chemicals that have accumulated in an animal's body. And most importantly, the longer that you have been following a healthy plant-based diet, the cleaner your body is.
So there's your answer. Stay vegan or go vegan. Forget the animals as a food source and become healthy. You know, when I became aware that food was the number one killer, in America, I saw some study that said that, I was really alarmed because, you think, oh, smoking, that's the number one killer, or something else, something cancer causing, but it's food.
It is.
A lot of people would be fairly dumbfounded when they hear that, really, I think.
I think so. People imagine that it's just genes and old age that cause these problems. We're not going to live forever, but your health can really rebound based on your food choices. One more tip. I promote organic agriculture regardless. I think it's always the best choice. But there are certain foods where it matters more than others. And what I mean by that is a spinach leaf is thin and fragile. And so insects are likely to attack it as it grows, and they could damage it. And so pesticides are used a lot when spinach is grown. So when you're buying spinach, buy organic spinach for sure. But on the other hand, let's say you're going to buy an avocado, for example. Mm. An avocado is big and thick, and an insect might sit on the outside, but if it takes anything out of it, it's just going to eat a little bit of the peel. Well, you're not going to eat the peel anyway. So avocado farmers tend not to use pesticides anywhere near as much as, say, spinach farmers do. So if you're having trouble finding an organic avocado, it may not matter so much. For spinach, it does. So the ones where it really matters are things like strawberries, spinach, nectarines, apples. Keep in mind, on an apple, you eat the peel. Grapes, peaches, cherries, pears, tomatoes, celery, potatoes, bell peppers, and hot peppers. That's my list where organic is really important. Take a papaya, for example. Yeah. If you take a papaya, papayas tend to be grown without pesticides for the most part, or not with very much. And it's not an issue. It's not an area where you need to have so much in the way of pesticides, because your insects have trouble creating havoc with them, and you're not going to eat the skin off the papaya anyway. Right. Same with a mango. Same with a lot of fruits. A cantaloupe, for example. A cantaloupe, you throw away the outside. So anyway, the point I'm making is it's relatively easy to make choices that have a dramatic effect on your health. And whether it's a sex hormone issue like endometriosis or cramps or other menstrual symptoms or hot flashes or thyroid issues, I'm hoping to have a roadmap that will really help people in your body in balance. And I'm hoping people will share this with others that are struggling.
Well, I hope they do too. I was really fascinated by the book. And like I said, I have been really more earnest in my vegan ways, and I've lost a lot of weight. And so I'm a believer. But you mentioned something I've followed diets for years, and I think it was just within the last 10, 15 years, they mentioned the importance of insulin and controlling insulin. You mentioned it in your book as well. Tell us about the importance of insulin control and how our food can control, the hormones that impact insulin.
About 1 in every 3 Americans has right now, whether they know it or not, they either have diabetes or they have pre-diabetes. And what that means is that insulin is not working right in their bodies. In most cases, what's happening is that their pancreas is making it. Your pancreas is right behind your belly button, and it's cranking out insulin that goes in your bloodstream. And when it arrives at the muscle cells or the cells of the liver, it parks next to the cell, and it's having trouble. What insulin is supposed to be doing is opening a little door on the cell to let sugar, glucose, go into the muscle cell to power your movement. But what's happening is the insulin is not working well. And for years, people didn't know why. They just thought, okay, your blood sugar is rising because somehow your insulin's not functioning right, let's give you insulin injections, or give you other medications to try to boost your insulin action. What our team and others have shown is that your muscle cells, depending on what you've been eating, can accumulate microscopic fat particles. And the fat particles build up and they stop insulin from working. When your diet is changed so that you get rid of all the animal fat and keep vegetable oils pretty low too, these fat particles dissipate from your muscle cells, and suddenly insulin can work again. This is the work at Yale University, Jerry Schulman and Kip Peterson and their team. And then we have been working with them to implement vegan diets and then test people and watch this fat get out of their liver cells and their muscle cells, and their insulin sensitivity starts working better. So when your insulin works better, then several things happen. Yeah. One is, this is why diabetes can go away, why prediabetes can go away, or never progress. But also, when people improve their insulin sensitivity, they find that weight loss is much easier, and they just feel better in so many ways. So insulin is malfunctioning in a lot of people's bodies, but they never were aware of why that was.
Yeah, and simply by going to a plant-based diet, you can control that. You can get that back in order, and you can get to your health. All right, one last question, Neal. Once again, we're talking in a week after the Golden Globes, where PETA was successful in getting them to have a plant-based menu, not a plant-based option, which, brought a whole lot of, backlash. I mean, people were concerned, they didn't want to be forced to eat healthy. How are we going to get a society that essentially has that standpoint to move toward health? Or is that really, we can't really force people to be healthy, I guess, huh?
No, and you don't need to force them. What we need to do is two things. Number one is we need healthy food options that are there. And we're seeing them more and more. What they did at the Golden Globes was fantastic. And I want to take off my hat to everything that you've done and others to make people more thoughtful about this. That is what really has motivated this kind of change. I'm talking about the work that you specifically are doing, and that others have done to make people want to make these choices. When you go to restaurants and you go to even the fast food places, they're incorporating meatless meals more and more and more and more. Right. So that the tasty options are there, but that's only half of it. The other half is people have to connect that to their health. And that's where a doctor like me comes in. So when I write a book like Your Body in Balance, the whole reason that I write this is to take scientific information and boil it down into step-by-step plans that people can put into action. And if you have that combination of healthy food and delicious food and understanding how it can be used to protect yourself or protect your children or protect your loved ones, that's really the answer. And by the way, let me make a pitch for Lindsay Nixon. Lindsay did the recipes for Your Body in Balance. And if you want to see how to make a beautiful pizza or wrap or a noodle recipe, or she's got chocolate cupcakes that are wonderful, you wouldn't think of these as all being healthy because they're so delectable, but they are. There's no animal products in them. The fat content in all of them is deliciously low. There's 65 recipes that Lindsay contributed to Your Body in Balance. It's the funnest health book that I have ever written, I have to say, and I hope people really enjoy it.
Well, Neal, I appreciate your time spending with us here at the PETA Podcast, and I want our listeners to know that you are essentially the maestro of the PETA Podcast Orchestra, playing lead guitar on our intro music and our outro music, and they should listen to see how multi-talented you are. Exactly.
Thank you for saying that. I have to say it has been fun, and although 99% of what I do is all medical, I was in rock and roll bands back when I was in college and medical school, and I never quite gave it up. So my band Carbon Works is there to entertain people if they want that. But I hope what people will do is when they're done with the podcast, go on wherever books are sold, whether it's Amazon or Barnes and Noble or their local bookstore would appreciate their business, and pick up a copy of Your Body in Balance, and think of somebody in your life who needs to feel better or needs a better healthy vegan meal. Put it to work, change your life.
All right. Dr. Neal Barnard, Your Body in Balance is the name of his new book. Neal, thank you very much.
Thank you, Emil.
Dr. Neal Barnard with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, talking about his new book, Your Body in Balance. Go to the show notes to learn how you can pick up his new book. It's got some great recipes, and it can help you resolve to stay vegan in 2020 and beyond, especially when you see how it can have a positive impact on your health. And that's our program. Hey, you can contact us at PETA.org. You can find me on Twitter at EmilAmok, that's EMILAMOK, or on aldef.org/blog, that's AALDEF.org/blog, or on AMOK.com. And go to amok.com, AMOK.com, to learn about my new one-man show, Emil Amok, Married to PETA, and other love stories. It's in San Francisco, February 1st and 6th at the San Francisco Playground Solo Fest. It's a fun look at speciesism, racism, ageism. Learn more at amok.com. And once again, thank you for listening. We've now done about 100 of these shows. Listen to them all at Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review the show. Remember, it helps get the word out about the issues you care about. Or at PETA.org. Our music, once again, provided by Carbonworks. Check them out on YouTube. And yes, that really is Dr. Barnard on guitar. Yeah. Hey, join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. New Year's greetings to all of you for a grand and peaceful 2020. I'm Emil Guillermo.